Hello everyone, welcome to episode 5 of 2 in the Queue. I'm here with our good friend James. We're going to talk over Skype about a new format called Tiny Leaders. I guess we'll start talking about Tiny Leaders then, since that's what this video is supposed to all be about. How did you hear about Tiny Leaders?
So I had heard about Tiny Leaders in the Facebook group I'm a part of. It's the DFW Facebook group for Magic out here. And somebody had posted the Star City Games article talking about...
Yeah, that's where I read it. Okay, cool.
Yep, and I mean, it pretty much, read it, and it immediately addressed, like, everything that kind of held me away from Commander and really said, hey, I want to play this format.
Okay, so yeah, I guess that would be my first question. Why Tiny Leaders instead of Commander?
So I think for me, like, I've always avoided, kind of what people define as casual Magic.
Right.
With Commander, you're looking at a multiplayer format, so you're not just dealing with the performance of your own deck or your play style, but having that political aspect of things, and, if you have a group of people and 3 people know each other pretty well and you're the one guy there, you're dealing with a different dynamic.
That's true.
So I really like that Tiny Leaders is 1v1 by intention, and you really kind of take that out. And also, I've always been an aggro player, so the limitation of 3 converted mana cost or less leans towards cards that I know well.
Plus the 15 fewer life is pretty good for you too.
Yeah, very much so.
So, okay, they have a Commander format that's called Dual Commander that's meant for one-on-one. What do you like more about the 50-card Tiny Leader deck than you would like about the French Commander format? Yeah,
so I had really looked closely at the French Commander format before, and it was probably just a matter of I'm putting my money in towards a certain direction and hadn't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
I really like I think with the 50-card deck construction, you're leaning towards stuff that is just really streamlined, really consistent.
For sure, absolutely, and you're playing basically a better limited deck. It feels like.
Yeah, and especially with such the broad card pool across Magic, and even at 3 CMC or less, there's so many cards that really have the same effect. So you're effectively running 4 of certain things. I mean, like Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain. The list goes on of cards that basically do the same thing. So.
Yeah, I was looking at Jeff and I. We sat down and we were like, okay, let's make Tiny Leader decks around the new 3-color commanders that they released in Fate Reforged. And we're going to look at you, Sean, and I was like, man, they have all the Ponders, the Preordains, all those cool spells that just trigger prowess.
Yeah, I think I've already played, I've played in 2 Tiny Leaders tournaments now, and it's already starting to kind of see a theme of pretty common staple cards.
Yeah, so Top, obviously, is probably one of those, but what else?
So I'd say, any of the... So there's, not a lot of true Wrath effects, but there's a lot of stuff that comes pretty close to it. It's one thing talking to people about Tiny Leaders, I see them say, oh, well, there's no Wraths, and then you really kind of look into it, and, you have Black Sun Zenith, Toxic Deluge, Martial Coup, Bonfire of the Damned, and there's a lot of different, Earthquake type effects.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So those, I think the blue package, that I covered earlier, along with, Ancestral Visions, is pretty popular.
Okay.
Anything... a lot of decks with Gataxian Probe. Smother is super good. I mean, in this format.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything where it's targeting cards that are 3 or less, like Inquisition of Kozilek. All of those cards all of a sudden become way more busted versions of cards.
Yeah, I do like that it warps the value of cards that you wouldn't have otherwise think about. That's one of the reasons that I really jumped on it quickly. Is it's like, oh, I get to use all these cards that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise.
Yeah, very much so. I think having that limitation, naturally we try and avoid limitations, but having that limitation also kind of does force you to look at cards in a new perspective and a new light. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of it because of that. Just the idea that, oh, okay, all these creatures are probably going to be 4 power or way less, and how are we going to approach that?
Yeah, the first deck, when I read the rules about Tiny Leader, the first deck I had thought about was an Anafenza deck, just with the heroes of Abzan, with everything there beats the vanilla test pretty well.
Sure.
Looking at Goyf, looking at Anafenza herself, Brimaz, yeah, all of those cards, start to get much bigger than a 3/3, and there's not a lot of stuff that can go toe to toe with it.
I think maybe they just wanted a format where Dark Confidant was good.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty set up for that, and I actually haven't played against a Dark Confidant yet, which is surprising. So.
That is kind of surprising. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about why Tiny Leaders instead of Commanders. So talk about what you would actually ended up settling on. Who's your Tiny Leader?
So I'm running Azuri Renegade Leader as my Tiny Leader.
Okay.
I had went through the list of all of the possible commanders and just kind of went through it several times. And I saw that card and it just kind of called out to me. It's very much an obvious like build around me commander. And I knew, with being an elf, you're going to have a lot of support.
Yeah, absolutely. With small creatures.
Yeah. So the deck, and it's pretty funny because the deck is extremely consistent. And the first game I ever played with it, I was able to cast Azuri and activate his overrun ability 3 times in the same turn.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm still deciding if my deck is powerful enough.
Is that what he's in there for, basically? Is just you cast him and then you overrun a bunch and attack with your elves?
Exactly, yeah. Okay. The regenerate effect has definitely come in handy. Unfortunately, he can't target himself with it, but there's times where like I'll come across an Earthquake and regenerate everybody but him, which is pretty easy between like Priest of Titania, Gaia's Cradle, Elvish Archdruid, and having enough mana to single regenerate each of my guys. and then...
Sorry, go ahead.
Then the next turn, just, recast them even with the commander tax and do the same thing I was going to do before.
Yeah, it seemed really resilient when I saw it. I was like, oh man, that's like an obvious, probably staple of the format. It's like, can you beat the Elves deck, whatever version of it people are running?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good indicator of the format where, I'm doing something that's pretty scary, consistent, and powerful. But there's definitely decks I see where I look at the deck and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to have too much of a hard time beating that deck unless my draws are just terrible.
Right.
But then on the other hand, I know that there's certain decks that if I go up against, I really just have little of a chance. I think anytime I see blue and black mana, I'm pretty worried because not only do they have Toxic Deluge and Black Sun Zenith, which are horrible for me, but they also have ways to tutor them up and all that.
Cool. Okay. So, what? How many games of Tiny Leader do you end up playing in Omaha?
So didn't get an event to fire, unfortunately. Okay. I kind of walked around and helped I helped to evangelize the format a bit. Yeah. A couple of my friends that were there already had decks built or decks proxied up, so we ended up just jamming several games throughout the day on Sunday. Cool.
Okay. Have you tried playing it multiplayer? Do you like it only as a single player?
I haven't tried playing it as multiplayer. I don't know if I will try it as multiplayer. I really like it as that kind of competitive format.
Okay. What do you think about the ban list that exists for Tiny Leader? So obviously they've banned pretty much any cheap mana accelerant out of it, and then they've also gotten rid of things like Jite and I'm trying to think of some of the other, and some of the more powerful commanders, like Edric and Rophilus and stuff like that.
I like the ban list a lot. I think I like how small the ban list is, really.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff on there I looked at and says, yeah, that makes sense. I like how much stuff was left off and how many completely broken things is still available to do in the format.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's cool that they've been working, at least whoever runs the Blogspot site has been working pretty hard to unban things, like put things through rigorous testing and see, like, oh, is this actually that powerful?
Yeah. It does seem like they have a pretty good approach for it. When I had first started playing my Azuri deck, I had that feeling in the pit of my stomach, like, oh, I hope they don't ban this because it's just so powerful.
Right.
And then actually playing some real games, I realized, like, okay, this isn't that crazy powerful. There's other people doing, equally or more so powerful things. So I'm just fine with my deck.
What other crazy things have you seen for Tiny Leaders?
So I think my favorite one so far, I played Tiny Leaders for F&M just this Friday, and went against a guy who's kind of known around the community as a pretty long-time Legacy player.
Okay.
And he was playing basically his Legacy Doomsday deck, just tailored for Tiny Leaders, and I got Doomsday both Game 1 and Game 2 pretty early on.
Is this Lab Maniac Doomsday, or is this a different kind of Doomsday?
Exactly. Yeah, it comboed off pretty well against me. I think in Game 1 I was like just one turn behind, and he had said like, if he didn't draw a certain card, that game would have been mine. But there's a lot of people doing some pretty scary combo stuff. I think Doomsday is a good one to look at.
Okay, that's probably I've only played against Doomsday once in Legacy, and the guy ended up beating himself. I had no idea what he was doing. He just like, oh, I lose, and I was like, okay, and then he signed the match slip and left.
Yeah, I've heard there's like a Doomsday primer that's like 70 pages of if you see their hand and different scenarios of what you put in your Doomsday stack based on what you see in their hand.
It's certainly one of the funner conversations I've ever had driving to Magic. Like, you know, we drive pretty regularly out here, 6 to 8 hours to something, so we'll sit there and talk about, okay, what if you're playing Doomsday, and you're playing against X, what do you want to Doomsday for?
Yeah, I think unfortunately my answer would be I just lose. So
that's too bad.
No, I just need to pick up the deck, and I actually may want to build that deck just to kind of get a feel for it in Tiny Leaders.
That actually seems like a really cool Tiny Leaders deck. I kind of want to build that deck now.
Yeah.
I was trying to put together some cool infinite combos in Doomsday, or not Doomsday, in Tiny Leader, and there's some really interesting like take a billion turns. You have to have lots of mana for it, but you can like the Magistrate Scepter, and you can Voltaic Key, and then Sundial of the Infinite to like end your turn, so you don't die off the red spell that gives you an extra turn.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's some still really powerful things you can do, even though it's only three casting cost.
Yeah, I was really happy to see it. Like it didn't end up just being like, you know, three mana or less good stuff decks. It's a very well defined format with aggro, mid range, control, and combo.
Cool. Well, so what do you see? Are you hoping that it catches fire? Because it seems like it's blowing up a little bit.
It really does. You know, even like walking around holding the sign in Omaha, a lot of people I talked to were in the process of building a deck or had at least heard about it. Some people mentioning like, oh, hey, yeah, my shop in my hometown is starting to run it. And, you know, a few people who hadn't heard about it, and then I talked to them about it, and they're like, oh, that sounds sweet. So, at very least, the 2 events I played this week, and these are the first events in the Dallas area. The first one fired with like 9 players, and
awesome.
then F&M I was at had 14.
Cool. Very awesome. Well, okay, thanks for joining me to talk about Tiny Leaders. What have you been up to Magic-wise? Did you go to Omaha?
Yeah, I've been to a couple GPs recently. So I did Grand Prix Nashville as a team concealed in October.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it was a great time. Went with a couple close friends. We went 5 and 4, so nothing spectacular, but you know, just like naturally a good weekend when you have like a team out there already.
Yeah, for sure. Is that your first team sealed?
It was.
Cool.
Yeah, we did like a lot of practice and preparation leading up to it. You know, I think some lessons learned actually being in the event. I don't think we were too far off. You know, like some of it, the pool wasn't super powerful, but right. You know, I definitely think some opportunities that we kind of identified as we were playing on the weekend.
Were you? So I did the first team sealed I had in San Jose back in RTR, and we learned that the placement of where the decks were was a really big deal. Is that still true?
I think we did pick up on that a bit. Like, you know, especially like a lot of teams in our strategy was to kind of put the fastest player and not essentially the fastest deck in the middle. Although I think, you know, fastest deck in the middle. I tend to play aggressive decks, but also play very slowly. So we had my friend Sean who leans towards playing control, but sat in the middle because he just jams much faster than I do.
Okay.
And he was available pretty early and kind of coached the 2 players on the left and the right, me being one of them. So
interesting.
And then so after that, did Grand Prix San Antonio. I finished top 64 there.
Awesome. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that was a good weekend for me. I'd kind of gone into that one like the whole drive down. I'm like, man, I'm gonna do terrible with this one. I just like wasn't feeling ready. I wasn't feeling strong with my deck, but you know, I like went out the night before and hung out with a good friend, and then just went there the day of and said, okay, I'm gonna play tight and see where this takes me. So. And
that was standard, right?
Yeah, that was standard. I was playing Jeskai Tempo.
Awesome. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And then Omaha was modern.
Yeah, I went to Denver, which was standard.
Oh, Denver. Okay, great.
Yeah. And then I went to Omaha after that, which was modern.
Did you keep the Jeskai Tempo as your deck for Denver?
No, Denver I went to like a red-green monsters, red-green aggro build.
Okay.
Like Curve started at like Air of the Wilds. Actually 4 Elvish Mystics, Air of the Wilds, into like Rabble Master, Fanatic of Xenagos, Stormbreath Dragon.
What did you feel like that was particularly amazing against? Why did you play that deck?
I always like to do stuff that applies pressure. I like that it's, you know, kind of bigger creatures that are harder to deal with in some way. I also had like Pilikranos in there, so I know that weekend, like a lot of the token strategies running around, I wanted to have something that could either be able to kind of block and threaten the tokens real well, or stuff that could just go over them.
Right. I mean, a 5/5 for 4 that can potentially sweep their team is pretty good.
Yeah, it was solid. And especially like with Elvish Mystic, like turn 2 Rabble Master, turn 3 Pilikranos, turn 4 Stormbreath Dragon are all like pretty crazy.
It's a decent curve for sure. Yeah. So then Omaha, what did you play in Omaha?
I did Affinity in Omaha. I'm like tried and true on an Affinity in Modern. So.
Did you play that all last PTQ season over the end of the summer?
I did, yeah. I would say that I was still picking it up and learning it then. I had, you know, I think I played 4 or 5 PTQs with it.
Damn,
I think
insane.
only one of them. Yeah. There's a ton of them out here. So.
Yeah. Jeff and I are always so jealous when we talk about, like, oh man, we should move to Texas. There's PTQs to go to every weekend. Yeah. Yeah,
especially with like the PPTQ season. I mean, I would say there's easily like 20 to 24 PPTQs that are like short driving range now. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, are they scheduling them like Saturday, Sunday? Like, could you theoretically play meaningful Magic every day of every weekend if you wanted to?
Yeah, I would say lately, especially with the PPTQ change, it's been like that. Like this coming weekend is one Saturday, one Sunday, and I think it's like that for the next 4 weeks.
That's awesome. Have you been playing a lot of the PPTQs?
Yeah, a fair amount of them. Only really interrupted when I'm going to GPs.
Right.
So I've actually like not done great at the PPTQs. Like I've had some pretty rough starts there. So really trying a couple of my close friends are queued and really trying to kind of tie things up and lock it down for the regional.
Be part of a team that goes basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Where is the regional for Texas? Is there one in Texas?
You know, I haven't even seen that list yet. I just assumed that it's in Dallas. Kind of everything ends up here.
Okay.
Is there a list of those regionals somewhere?
There is. So for us, it's either LA or Albuquerque is where we have to go. How big have your PTQs been, or PPTQs rather?
They've been pretty, like, the first one of the season was hosted as a 1K. There was a shop, a good friend of mine is actually kind of coordinating for a chain of shops and rented out like a convention center space and all that. So hosted it as a 1K. There was like 60 or 70 players at that one.
Okay.
And then I would say the rest I've seen anywhere from kind of the 20 to 30 player range.
Oh, interesting.
I've heard of one as small as 11.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The ones we have here are 60 for like the bigger shops, and then the smallest we've had is 41.
Okay. Yeah, and I imagine so. There's probably a fair amount between like Tucson and Phoenix that most people go to.
Yeah, there's basically one every weekend, which is a really nice change. Usually for PTQs we had to travel to San Diego or LA or Albuquerque. So.
Yeah, a couple like I think there's one weekend where I'm thinking about doing like a 2-hour drive out to a PPTQ.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully it's a little soft.
Right. Okay, just in order to try to spike it.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they all standard? Do you have any alternate format PPTQs?
So the same one that's kind of running them for a chain is running one modern this season, and I think there's a store that's running like a sealed one.
I'm hoping in the future that stores take a little bit more risk on the formats.
I think it's good. Like I think there's probably a limit to how many stores can do that, but I think you can definitely draw out like a group of players that really love modern and get a pretty good showing.
Or even like this weekend, just doing a sealed event, because I'm sure people want to open the new set.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. And especially for like, you know, it's always hard going into a competitive event like the day after a set releases. The one I'm going to this weekend is standard. So I'm probably skipping F&M to crack my case. Yeah, and hopefully get the cards I need. So.
Do you have an idea of what you're going to try to put together?
So I've been testing. Fortunately, my roommate is one of the people that's queued for the regional now. So he's going to like a win a play set of Fate Reforged tournament.
Okay.
And so I think our gauntlet right now is like Jeskai tokens, Abzan aggro, blue black control, and then we also have this like Mardu tokens list. I say he's been doing all the work and putting the decks together. So.
Is that anything with like Soulfire Grandmaster or Monastery Mentor?
Yeah, so the Jeskai tokens were running Monastery Mentor.
Okay.
It did have Soulfire Grandmaster in there. I think he wasn't a big fan of it, so we're talking about like Hushwing Griff in place of it.
Okay. Seems fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool.
I do like Soulfire Grandmaster. I see a lot of potential in it, and like I keep thinking about like probably once the format shakes out a bit, some kind of like Jeskai control burn build where like it's pretty light on creatures, and maybe even able to run like mainboard Anger of the Gods and stuff like that.
Right.
Just with all those token strategies running around.
It might even just be better, one of those cards that's better in an Eternal format. Like Delver is way better in Modern and Legacy than it ever was in Standard. Like, it was okay in Standard, but it wasn't amazing.
Hey, thank goodness for the new ban list.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't know. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm disappointed Pod got the axe, but I'm really excited that Golgari Grave Troll's back.
Yeah, I was really surprised. Like, I had originally put it on, like, ban Treasure Cruise, keep Dig Through Time and watch it really closely, and probably unban. Like, I really want them to unban Bloodbraid Elf, and I thought Golgari Grave Troll is, like, a fine one to unban.
I agree. I mean, a lot of people... So I was on Reddit this morning just to see the explosion, and it got, like 1,000 comments in under an hour, which is pretty good. But I did a search for, like, GGT or Golgari, just to see how many people were talking about Golgari Grave Troll, and it was under 5 comments were talking about Golgari Grave Troll. I don't think people know what to do with it yet.
Yeah, I've never really played with them, so I kind of reserve judgment on it, but, like, I just look at that card, look at its casting cost, and say, with what I've seen other decks in Modern do, he seems a little too slow or a little too fair, for what other decks are able to do. I mean, you look at Golgari Grave Troll and then look at Splinter Twin and, which way are you going to go?
For sure. I mean, people are talking about Vengevine being the big winner here, that you get to mill all your Vengevines and then you can cast them out of your graveyard, but I don't know. We'll see.
It is pretty exciting. I mean, I know one of my good friends was running like a Vengevine deck even before it, and was really having a lot of fun with it on Moto. So, I mean, I see potential there. I haven't played with it, so I really I just see a card and in a vacuum I don't like it, but I'm sure people are going to do broken things with it. For
sure. It's going to be a lot different than Legacy Dredge, which I kind of like the ability to see Grave Troll in a different role than as a just a dread returner. He'll be a engine for something else, basically, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. I mean, modern is kind of a good balance of, not nearly as broken as stuff in Legacy, but still plenty of unfair things. And like, even with like the through the breach deck that popped up, people are still able to take new angles on things and be surprisingly competitive with it. Yeah,
I've enjoyed pretty much every Modern tournament / season I've played through.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, even going into Omaha, like I knew Affinity wasn't situated too well with how popular Delver is.
Right.
But you can still, like, it's very much like play the deck and you have a good shot. I barely missed making day 2. It was like a winning into day 2 for me in round 9 at Omaha. So,
well, that's still a good performance, and I'm sure you were there with friends too, so that made Sunday probably just fine.
Yeah, it was a good time. I was actually on the subject of tiny leaders. I don't know if you saw. I made a sign and was walking around Omaha trying to get an 8-man tiny leaders event.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
What are your Magic plans for the future? Do you have any Grand Prix coming up?
No. Well, actually, yeah, coming up, I'm looking at Memphis in February.
Okay.
It'll be my birthday weekend, so
Awesome.
spend some time out there with friends and all that. Then also, of course, Vegas. Can't miss that one.
Yeah, for sure. That's the one I'm shooting for.
Yeah, I ended up booking a house for that one on Airbnb for super cheap, so really excited about that.
It's going to be in a really cool location, I think. It's off the strip, but it's close enough. It's on the monorail, so you can still get there pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I haven't been to Vegas since high school, so it'll be the first time there since I'm 21 and actually get to experience it the way it's intended.
Awesome. What do you do any writing for Magic or espousing on Twitter or anything like that? Do you want people to come find you at?
So I'm on Twitter. It's at the James R. Black. Unfortunately, just plain old James R. Black was taken. So
you didn't want to go James R. Black official or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. I guess the is probably even more egotistical than official. So
yeah,
it's just what I thought of at the time.
Okay.
Mostly, on Facebook, as facebook.com/James R. Black.
Sure, cool. Well, thanks a lot, James, for joining me. Remember, there's always a game when you've got 2 in the queue.